Story 4. Before Coffee. The History of Morning Beverages Across Civilizations, Section 1. The First Sip of Dawn. Water. Grain and grape. Imagine, if you will, the quiet hush of an ancient morning. The first sliver of light barely kissing the horizon, painting the sky in hues of soft gray and pale rose. There is no insistent whir of a coffee grinder, no automatic drip machine gurgling to life, no comforting aroma of roasted beans filling the air. For countless millennia, the start of the day unfolded without the stimulating embrace of caffeine. Yet, the universal human need for a morning ritual, particularly a replenishing liquid to greet the new day, is as old as civilization itself. What did humanity reach for, that first conscious sip, before the world awoke to the invigorating bitter notes of coffee? The answer is a tapestry woven from necessity, resourcefulness, accidental discovery, and deep cultural roots, far more diverse and subtly fascinating than you might initially imagine. At its most fundamental, most primal level, the very first morning beverage, common to all civilizations and times, was simply water, pure, unadulterated, and utterly essential. Yet, the simplicity of this answer belies the profound complexity and challenge of its acquisition in the ancient world. Clean, potable water was not a given. It was a precious resource, often guarded, fought over, and painstakingly transported. The quality of local water sources varied wildly, from crystal-clear mountain springs to murky, disease-ridden river waters. For millennia, the act of drinking water, especially unfiltered and untreated, carried inherent risks. Stomach ailments, dysentery, and other waterborne diseases were constant threats, silent killers that shaped daily habits and spurred ingenious, if rudimentary, methods of purification, like boiling or simple decantation. Thus, the seemingly simple act of a morning drink of water was often a gamble, or at best, a quest. This ever-present concern for safe hydration subtly and profoundly influenced the evolution of morning beverages. It was out of this necessity, combined with the agricultural revolution's bounty of grains, that humanity stumbled upon one of its earliest and most enduring solutions: fermentation. Imagine an accidental discovery, perhaps a forgotten bowl of grain porridge, left out in the warm sun, exposed to wild yeasts. What began as a spoiled meal might have, through serendipity, transformed into a mildly intoxicating, surprisingly refreshing, and crucially, safer liquid. This was the genesis of beer and ale, beverages that would come to define the mornings, and indeed the entire days, of countless ancient peoples. In civilizations like Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt, beer was not merely a recreational drink. It was a staple, a fundamental component of the daily diet, often consumed from dawn until dusk. It was, in many ways, a liquid bread. The beer brewed in these eras was vastly different from the crisp, often highly alcoholic lagers or ales we consume today. It was typically a thick, cloudy concoction, low in alcohol, often less than 3%. Rich in nutrients, and packed with suspended yeast and grain particles. It provided calories, vitamins, particularly B vitamins, scarce in grain-based diets, and, crucially, a source of hydration that was inherently safer than most available water. The fermentation process killed many of the harmful bacteria present in raw water, rendering the beverage comparatively safer to drink throughout the day, even for children. You can almost picture an Egyptian laborer, starting their arduous day under the scorching sun, handed a ceramic mug of thick, nourishing beer as their first meal of the morning, providing both sustenance and a mild, sustained energy release. For them, beer was not a luxury. It was daily sustenance, a right, often distributed as part of their wages. The daily brewing of beer was a constant activity in households and specialized breweries, a quiet hum of activity underlying the entire rhythm of ancient life. The boring details involved the simple malting of barley or other grains, crude, mashing and spontaneous fermentation in large clay vats, often without precise control, leading to a drink that varied widely in taste and strength. It was a testament to human adaptability, turning a simple agricultural product into a vital life-sustaining liquid. As civilizations expanded across the Mediterranean, another agricultural staple rose to prominence, the grape. In ancient Greece and Rome, wine became the dominant alcoholic beverage, woven deeply into the fabric of social, religious, and even medical practices. However, pure, undiluted wine was largely reserved for symposia, evening drinking parties, or specific religious ceremonies. For daily consumption, and especially for morning hydration, wine was almost universally diluted, often heavily, with water. This dilution not only made the wine less intoxicating for daytime activities, but also extended its supply and improved its palatability, making it more refreshing. The practice was so ingrained that to drink undiluted wine was often considered barbaric or uncivilized. Beyond simple diluted wine, the Romans developed a particularly common and fascinating morning beverage known as posca. This was a mixture of water and sour wine or vinegar, often seasoned with herbs or spices. While it might sound unappetizing to our modern palate, posca was incredibly popular, especially among soldiers, laborers, and the lower classes. It was cheap, readily available, and served a crucial function. The acidity of the vinegar acted as a mild antiseptic, helping to purify questionable water sources, making it safer to drink. It was also remarkably refreshing, particularly in the hot Mediterranean climate, and provided a mild energy boost without the full intoxicating effects of undiluted wine. You can almost taste the tart, earthy notes of posca on the tongue of a Roman legionary marching under the morning sun, a simple, practical elixir to begin a long day of disciplined effort. It was a no-nonsense, pragmatic drink, symbolizing the Roman emphasis on utility and endurance. The making of posca was equally humble, mixing leftover or cheap sour wine with water in simple ceramic vessels, perhaps adding a sprig of mint or a dash of salt. It was a common sight in taverns and army camps, a testament to its pervasive utility. Beyond the fermented grains and grapes, other regions and cultures developed their own unique morning rituals centered around different types of infusions. In ancient China, for example, the very earliest forms of tea were consumed, though not in the highly refined, ceremonial manner we might associate with later periods. These early teas were often more akin to medicinal tonics or boiled concoctions of various leaves and herbs, consumed for their purported health benefits or their mild stimulating properties. The careful cultivation of tea plants and the intricate rituals of tea preparation would come much later, but the fundamental idea of infusing plants in hot water for a morning boost or a restorative effect was present. Other cultures across the ancient world also utilized various herbal infusions. Depending on the local flora, people might brew hot concoctions from mint, chamomile, linden, or other indigenous plants. These were consumed for a multitude of reasons: for their medicinal properties, to settle the stomach, to provide warmth on a cold morning, or simply for their pleasant taste. These infusions lacked the stimulating kick of coffee or modern tea, offering instead a gentle comfort or mild therapeutic benefit, a quiet preparation for the day ahead. These were simple, often unrecorded acts, part of the fabric of domestic life, a quiet contribution to daily well-being. The boring details involve foraging for specific herbs, drying them, and steeping them in boiled water over an open fire, a common morning chore in countless ancient homes. The universal choices for morning beverages in the pre-coffee world were fundamentally shaped by a combination of factors: climate dictating available agriculture, safety concerns over potable water, and the underlying human desire for mild stimulation or ritual. Whether it was the thick, nourishing beer of Mesopotamia, the refreshing, slightly tart posca of Rome, or the earthy herbal infusions of various indigenous cultures. Each morning beverage served a purpose beyond mere hydration. It was a connection to the earth, a product of human ingenuity, and a vital, often life-saving, component of daily sustenance. These were not drinks for hurried consumption, but for slow, deliberate sips, a quiet moment of preparation before the day's labor truly began. The lack of potent stimulants meant that energy for the day had to be drawn from food, rest, and the steady, enduring rhythms of life itself. This landscape of morning drinks, so vastly different from our own, underscores how deeply cultural and historical context shapes even our most mundane habits. Before the world was awakened by the potent jolt of coffee, humanity found its morning comfort, energy, and safety in a remarkable diversity of liquids, each telling a silent story of survival, ingenuity, and tradition. Section 2. Beyond grains and grapes, early teas, chocolates, and herbal brews. As the ancient world slowly and imperceptibly shed its nascent reliance on mere water, often questionable in its purity, and the comforting, if mildly alcoholic, fermented staples of grains and grapes for its morning rituals, a subtle, yet profound, shift in human desire began to emerge across diverse cultures. The fundamental needs for hydration and sustenance remained absolutely paramount, yet an underlying yearning for beverages offering more than just simple nourishment or a gentle, alcohol-induced ease started to ripple through various civilizations. This growing demand transcended the basic physiological necessities, hinting at a deeper human craving for subtle invigoration, ceremonial connection, or perhaps simply a comforting prelude to the day's demands. This next expansive chapter in our journey into the quiet, often overlooked, history of dawn beverages takes us far from the bustling Roman Forum and the fertile plains of the Nile, carrying us instead into the serene, mist-shrouded mountain gardens of ancient China, the verdant, dense, and humid jungles of Mesoamerica, and the humble hearths in countless homes where local herbs patiently yielded their restorative, often calming, morning comforts. Each region, shaped by its unique climate, flora, and cultural inclinations, contributed its own distinctive liquid to the rich tapestry of pre-coffee morning sips. Imagine, if you will, the cool ethereal mists rising slowly over the ancient mountains of China, gradually revealing carefully cultivated terraces of verdant shrubs, clinging precariously to steep, often precipitous hillsides. Here, amidst whispers of ancient legend and profound philosophical thought, began humanity's long, intricate, and deeply revered relationship with tea. Though its origins are beautifully shrouded in the elegant mists of myth, often attributed to the legendary Emperor Shen Nung, the divine farmer, who around 2737 BCE supposedly discovered its properties when a few leaves from a nearby tea bush fortuitously drifted into his pot of boiling water. Its very early consumption was a far cry from the refined, aesthetic ceremony that would come to define tea culture in later, more celebrated dynasties. For many centuries, perhaps even millennia, spanning from its fabled discovery through the Shang, Zhou, and early Han dynasties, tea was predominantly consumed not as a delicate social beverage, but as a robust medicinal tonic. It was, quite literally, an herbal concoction boiled vigorously, often not just with tea leaves, but with a medley of other wild leaves, pungent spices like ginger or orange peel, or even rudimentary grains like rice, to extract every last drop of its purported healing and fortifying properties. This was not the nuanced, palate-pleasing infusion for leisurely enjoyment. Rather, it was a practical, often intensely bitter, decoction, explicitly intended to invigorate the body, settle a turbulent stomach, and clarify a weary mind, particularly as the very first liquid taken to greet the day. The earliest methods of preparation for these foundational teas were as unrefined as their primary purpose. You wouldn't find delicate porcelain teapots or meticulously measured, individual loose leaves. Instead, picture rough, unglazed earthen pots bubbling steadily over an open fire, often in rustic kitchens or monastic refectories where dried tea. Leaves, perhaps coarsely ground or more commonly, pressed into crude, dense cakes or bricks, were simply steeped or even continuously boiled for extended periods. These brick teas were pragmatic. They were easier to transport and store over long distances. To prepare them, a piece of the brick would be chipped off, sometimes pounded into a powder, and then boiled with water. The resulting liquid would have been remarkably potent, often cloudy due to suspended particles, intensely earthy and distinctly robust, a far cry from the subtle, fragrant infusions that would come to define sophisticated tea ceremonies in subsequent eras. It was a potent brew intended for direct, practical effect, a deep, restorative warmth that permeated the body, a gentle yet sustained mental clarity that slowly roused the senses without the jarring jolt of stronger stimulants. This gradual, almost imperceptible, transition from purely medicinal use to more regular, widespread consumption, still frequently as a morning restorative or a digestive aid, laid the essential cultural and agricultural groundwork for tea's eventual, seemingly unstoppable global dominance. The entire process, from the patient cultivation of the tea plants on challenging mountain slopes to the slow, smoky, and deliberate process of preparing the brew, was a quiet art in itself, a testament to unhurried, intentional labor. Early Buddhist monks, for instance, are credited with popularizing tea, using its mild, stimulating properties to aid their long hours of meditation, often consuming it first thing in the morning to sharpen their focus. This connection to spiritual practice further solidified tea's role as a morning awakening. Thousands of miles away, across the vast, often turbulent oceans, in the lush, steaming landscapes of ancient Mesoamerica, a realm of vibrant jade artistry, monumental pyramids reaching for the sky, and sophisticated astronomical knowledge, another extraordinary plant was being meticulously cultivated, one whose humble, unassuming seeds would eventually conquer the world's sweet tooth, but whose initial, primary use was strikingly different: cacao. Long before it was transformed into solid chocolate bars, long before it was heavily mixed with copious amounts of cane sugar, a sweetener unknown to them, cacao was predominantly consumed as a bitter, often spicy, frothy beverage. It was a drink deeply entwined with the sacred, reserved for elaborate rituals, exclusive elite consumption, and indeed, as a profoundly energizing morning tonic. The Olmecs who pioneered its cultivation, the sophisticated Maya, and later the powerful Aztecs, revered cacao as a sacred gift from the very gods themselves, a divine sustenance often so valuable that its precious dried beans served as a crucial form of currency, used for everyday trade and as tribute paid to rulers. The daily preparation of morning cacao in these civilizations was an elaborate, painstaking ritual that speaks volumes about its immense cultural and practical importance. A ritual that unfolded slowly with rhythmic sounds and deep aromas. Imagine the meticulous process. First, the vibrant cacao pods, carefully harvested from trees growing in the humid jungle undergrowth, were opened to reveal their raw, pulpy beans. These beans were then carefully fermented, a crucial step that developed their complex flavors, and subsequently dried, often spread on large mats in the sun. Next, they were gently roasted over a controlled fire, a process that coaxed out their rich aromas and subtle flavors, transforming their raw bitterness into a more palatable earthiness. After roasting, the brittle outer shells were painstakingly removed, often by hand, a task requiring patience and nimble fingers. The deshelled nibs were then meticulously ground into a thick, oily paste, an incredibly laborious and time-consuming task that often required specialized tools, like the metate, a curved stone grinding surface, and a mano, a cylindrical grinding stone, worked by hand for hours until a smooth, consistent texture was achieved. This paste, almost like a thick butter, was then mixed with hot or cold water, often heavily flavored with an astonishing array of local spices, fiery chili peppers, like chili de arbol or ancho, for a pungent, invigorating kick, fragrant vanilla beans for a subtle sweetness and depth, vibrant annatto seeds for a ritualistic sacred red hue, or even finely ground maize flour for added thickness, sustenance, and body. The mixture was then poured repeatedly, often from a significant height, from one vessel to another, specifically designed for this purpose, to create a thick, rich, highly prized layer of foam on top. This froth was considered the very essence of the drink, often reserved for the most honored guests or the highest-ranking individuals, a symbol of status and reverence. The resulting beverage, whether served warm or at room temperature, was dense, intensely earthy, often spicy, and distinctly bitter, utterly unlike any sweetened hot chocolate we know today. For the Mesoamerican elite, the powerful rulers, venerable priests, and formidable warriors, a morning cup of this robust cacao brew was a vital, almost sacred, part of their daily routine, providing sustained energy, a mild stimulant, theobromine, a subtle cousin to caffeine, offering a gentler, longer-lasting lift without the jitteriness, and a deeply symbolic connection to their cosmology, their divine patrons, and their ancestors. It was a drink of power, of sustenance, of communication, with the divine and of quiet, deliberate awakening, consumed with a solemn gravity befitting its sacred origins. The unhurried process of its preparation, from the raw bean to the prized aromatic froth, was itself a meditative act, a daily communion with a powerful plant spirit that grounded them before the demands of their complex societies. Beyond these major developments in China and Mesoamerica, various civilizations across Eurasia, Africa, and even other parts of the Americas turned to a myriad of other indigenous plants for their morning infusions, often tailored meticulously to the local flora, climate, and specific community needs. In many parts of ancient Africa, for instance, decoctions derived from various tree barks, roots, or specific leaves were carefully boiled to create stimulating or medicinal morning drinks. The specific ingredients varied widely by region. Perhaps leaves from the Catha edulis plant, known as khat, in parts of East Africa, chewed or brewed for its stimulant properties that promote alertness and suppress appetite, crucial for long journeys or early morning tasks. Or infusions from the kola nut in West Africa, valued for their mild stimulant and hunger-suppressing effects, often consumed as a social ritual or a practical aid for endurance. These were not simply casual drinks for leisure. Their preparation and consumption were often deeply rooted in sophisticated traditional ecological knowledge, passed down through generations, representing simple yet surprisingly effective solutions for daily well-being, endurance, and communal bonding under challenging conditions. The rhythmic pounding of roots or the gentle simmering of leaves over a small smoky fire would have been the quiet, familiar soundtrack to countless dawns across the continent. In parts of ancient South America, long before the arrival of European explorers, certain indigenous groups cultivated and brewed plants that would become foundational to later cultures and even global beverages. The yerba mate plant, for instance, native to what is now Paraguay and parts of Brazil and Argentina, was traditionally steeped to create an invigorating, earthy infusion. While its widespread popularity as a daily morning beverage largely developed after the colonial period, its ancient roots as a stimulant, social drink, and source of vital nutrients are undeniable, often consumed through a shared gourd. Similarly, in the high Andes, chewing or infusing coca leaves provided a vital, mild stimulant and appetite suppressant, helping people cope with the arduous demands of high altitude and sustained physical labor. These were deeply practical morning solutions, often consumed with little overt ceremony, but with great purpose, enabling survival and productivity in challenging environments. For communities nestled in the ancient Near East, parts of India, and along the bustling trade arteries of the Silk Road, spice infusions were common morning comforts, a testament to their sophisticated understanding of botanicals. Hot water, infused with the warm, aromatic notes of ginger, the floral sweetness of cardamom, the earthy depth of turmeric, the subtly sweet complexity of cinnamon, or even the sharp heat of black pepper, served as warming, digestive aids to gently start the day. These spices were not merely culinary flavorings. They were highly valued for their perceived medicinal qualities, their subtle stimulating properties, and their ability to aid digestion, gently preparing the stomach and senses for the day's first meal. The quiet clinking of ceramic bowls, the soft hiss and gentle aroma of simmering spices over a small hearth, would have been the tranquil, comforting backdrop to countless ancient mornings, a humble yet effective daily ritual steeped in empirical knowledge. Finally, for communities across the globe whose livelihoods revolved predominantly around animal husbandry, particularly in nomadic or pastoral societies, animal milk, sourced from cows, goats, sheep, camels, horses, mare's milk, or even yaks, often served as a primary morning beverage, rich in calories and nutrients. While a significant portion of the adult human population globally is lactose intolerant, many ancient populations, especially those with long histories of dairying, developed specific genetic adaptations for lactose persistence, allowing them to digest milk into adulthood. For these groups, or for children universally, milk provided vital proteins, fats, and hydration. It could be consumed fresh, drawn directly from the animal in the early morning, or more commonly, fermented into stable, nutritious products like yogurt, kefir-like drinks, or kumis, a mildly alcoholic, effervescent fermented mare's milk, particularly popular among steppe nomads. These fermented dairy products were not only easier to digest for many, but also offered a crucial means of preservation, making milk last longer in the absence of refrigeration, a vital aspect of survival for nomadic peoples. The morning milking ritual, accompanied by the gentle bleating of the herd and the warmth of fresh or fermented milk, would have provided a tranquil and profoundly nourishing start to dawn in these pastoral societies, a direct and intimate connection to the living land and its animals. The motivations behind this astonishing diversity of morning beverages in the pre-coffee world were profoundly practical, deeply cultural, and intrinsically linked to the very conditions of ancient life. Firstly, and perhaps most critically, was hydration and safety. In a world utterly devoid of widespread, clean municipal tap water, any liquid that had been subjected to the purifying heat of boiling, the sterilizing action of fermentation, or infused with specific antiseptic plant properties, offered a significantly safer alternative to raw, potentially contaminated water sources. This basic survival imperative shaped countless daily habits. Secondly, nutrition and sustenance were paramount. Many of these drinks, especially the ancient beers, fermented dairy products, and dense cacao brews, provided vital calories, proteins, and micronutrients, effectively acting as an initial liquid meal to kickstart the body's energy reserves for a day of often intense physical labor, particularly for farmers, builders, and soldiers. Thirdly, and perhaps most subtly, was the universal human desire for mild stimulation, comfort, or ritual. Before the powerful, often jarring jolt of modern coffee, these ancient brews offered a gentler awakening, a sustained mental clarity. From tea, a subtle physical invigoration from cacao, or a simple warming comfort from herbal infusions. They provided a structured ritual, a precious moment of quiet pause, a gentle transition from the realm of sleep to the demanding sphere of waking activity. This quiet ritual, performed thousands upon thousands of times each day across civilizations, served as a grounding force, a way to mentally prepare for the day's challenges. These morning drinks were, in almost all cases, not hurried gulps consumed on the go, as is so common in our fast-paced modern world. The very act of preparation was often an unhurried, deliberate process, reflecting the slower, more deliberate pace of ancient life. The tedious grinding of grains or cacao beans by hand, the patient boiling of water over an open flame, the careful pouring to create prized foam, the slow steeping of leaves, each step demanded patience, presence, and a certain degree of acquired skill. This meticulousness imbued the morning beverage with a deeper significance, elevating it from a mere necessity into a daily ritual, a quiet affirmation of human connection to the natural world and its generous, often hidden, gifts. It was a time for contemplation, for quiet sounds, for the gentle release of aromas into the dawn air. This astonishingly rich and diverse tapestry of ancient morning sips, from the robust, nourishing beers of the Fertile Crescent to the bitter, sacred and ritualistic cacao of Mesoamerica, the subtle restorative teas of the East, the myriad comforting herbal concoctions found globally, and the life-sustaining fermented milks of nomadic peoples, paints a vivid picture of a world where dawn was greeted not by a universal, stimulating jolt, but by a remarkable array of local concoctions. Each sip tells a silent, profound story of human survival, ingenuity, adaptation to environment, and deeply ingrained cultural tradition. They remind us how resourceful humanity has always been, transforming the raw bounty of nature into daily comfort and quiet sustenance long before a certain dark, aromatic bean from the distant highlands of Ethiopia would begin its slow, relentless march to global dominance, forever altering the world's morning routine and the very soundscape of our modern awakenings. Section 3. The Awakening of Continents. The global march of coffee and tea as we journey deeper into the quiet, often unacknowledged, history of humanity's morning sips. We arrive at a pivotal juncture, a time when the localized, diverse elixirs of ancient civilizations began to yield to the overwhelming, transformative influence of two remarkable plants, tea and coffee. These were not merely new drinks. They were harbingers of a globalized world, catalysts for profound social, economic, and intellectual revolutions. Their ascent would forever alter the rhythm of mornings across continents, displacing countless indigenous brews and ushering in an era defined by the quiet yet potent hum of caffeine. Let us first turn our gaze back to the east, to the verdant, mist-shrouded mountains of China, where our previous section left the burgeoning story of tea. From its ancient origins as a medicinal decoction, consumed for its practical efficacy, tea began a slow, deliberate metamorphosis into a beverage of profound cultural, aesthetic, and even spiritual significance. This transformation gained momentum during the Tang Dynasty, 618 to 907 CE, often considered the golden age of classical Chinese culture. It was during this era that tea consumption diffused beyond the purely medicinal and monastic realms into the broader aristocracy and scholarly classes. The great poet Lu Yu, sometimes hailed as the sage of tea, penned his seminal work, the classic of tea, Cha Jing, in the 8th century. This wasn't merely a recipe book. It was a comprehensive treatise detailing every aspect of tea, its origins, cultivation, meticulous processing, precise preparation, and its philosophical connotations. His work elevated tea to an art form, a refined ritual, a source of quiet contemplation. The method of preparation then favored powdered tea, where carefully processed tea leaves were ground into a fine powder, whisked vigorously with hot water until a frothy, jade-green liquid formed. Imagine the rhythmic, soothing sound of the whisk against the ceramic bowl, a quiet prelude to the day's work or study. This powdered tea culture would later be enthusiastically adopted and perfected in Japan. From China, tea embarked on its momentous journey, often hand in hand with the spread of Buddhism. Monks, finding tea indispensable for their long hours of meditation, carried tea seeds and knowledge of its cultivation to neighboring lands. It reached Korea by the 7th century, where it became integrated into monastic and aristocratic traditions. Its arrival in Japan during the 9th century, brought by Buddhist monks like Sekso and Kokei, was even more impactful. Over centuries, Japanese tea culture evolved its own unique and deeply spiritual path, culminating in the intricate and revered sha-no, the Japanese tea ceremony. This elaborate ritual, with its emphasis on harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility, wa kaisei yaku, transformed the simple act of preparing and consuming tea into a profound meditative practice, often performed as a quiet morning ritual to cultivate mindfulness and inner peace. The soft, deliberate movements, the gentle clinking of utensils, the careful whisking of the vibrant green matcha, powdered tea, these were the subtle, serene sounds that might accompany the start of a day for a Japanese scholar or aristocrat. A stark contrast to the boisterous clamor of other civilizations, as tea's cultural significance deepened in East Asia. Its practical value as a commodity began to propel its westward journey along the vast, dusty arteries of the Silk Road. Caravans carried compressed tea bricks, sometimes even used as a form of currency, from the tea-growing regions of China through Central Asia, reaching Persia and parts of the Middle East by the early medieval period. Here, tea encountered new palates and adapted to local customs, often brewed with sugar or local spices, integrating itself into the local hospitality traditions. Its arrival in Europe, however, was much later, primarily by sea in the early 17th century, brought by Dutch traders. Initially a costly curiosity for the wealthy elite, tea slowly began its infiltration into European society, its exotic allure promising health and sophistication. The gradual popularization of tea in Europe, particularly in Britain, would eventually lead to global empires being built upon its trade, and violent conflicts waged over its control, a far cry from its peaceful monastic origins. The sheer scale of this trade meant meticulous cultivation on vast plantations, often relying on coerced labor, a stark and boring but significant reminder of the hidden human cost beneath seemingly innocuous commodities. Now let us turn our attention to the other great stimulant that would reshape global mornings: coffee. Its origins are rooted in the lush, high-altitude plateaus of Ethiopia, steeped in enduring legend. The most widely known tale recounts a goat-herder named Kaldi, who, around the 9th century CE, observed his goats becoming unusually energetic and playful after munching on the bright red berries of a particular shrub. Curious, Kaldi sampled the berries himself and experienced a similar invigorating effect. He shared his discovery with a local monastery, where the monks initially disapproved, casting the berries into a fire. But the enticing aroma that arose from the burning beans led them to rake the embers and brew a drink from the roasted beans, discovering its remarkable power to keep them awake during long hours of prayer and meditation. This apocryphal tale, while perhaps embellished, captures the essence of coffee's invigorating nature. From Ethiopia, coffee made its slow, clandestine journey north across the Red Sea to Yemen in the Arabian Peninsula, likely by the 5th-10th century. It was here, in the Sufi monasteries of Yemen, that coffee truly began its ascent as a daily beverage. Monks found it invaluable for maintaining their spiritual vigilance during nocturnal prayers, a peaceful yet effective antidote to drowsiness. From Yemen, coffee consumption rapidly spread to the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, then to the bustling markets of Cairo, Damascus, and Baghdad. By the 16th century, coffee had become an integral part of daily life across the Islamic world. This rapid diffusion led to the emergence of a revolutionary social institution, the coffee house, kahvekhane in Persian, kahvehane in Turkish. Unlike the private, often silent rituals of early tea consumption, coffee houses were vibrant, bustling hubs of intellectual exchange, social interaction, and political discourse. Imagine stepping into a dimly lit aromatic coffee house in 16th century Cairo. The rich, earthy scent of freshly roasted and ground coffee beans permeates the air, mingling with the sweet fragrance of hookah smoke and the low murmur of conversation. Men, often from diverse backgrounds, sit on comfortable cushions, sipping small cups of thick, black, unsweetened coffee. Here, poetry was recited, stories were told, chess and backgammon games were played, news was exchanged, and lively debates on philosophy, politics, and daily life unfolded late into the night. These were public living rooms, accessible to many, fostering a new kind of urban sociality. The very existence of such spaces, outside the home or the mosque, was revolutionary. Naturally, such a powerful new stimulant and social catalyst faced initial resistance. Some religious authorities in the Islamic world initially condemned coffee as an intoxicant, akin to wine, leading to sporadic bans and theological debates. Authorities also viewed coffee houses with suspicion, fearing they fostered dissent and idleness. However, the immense popularity and widespread adoption of coffee proved unstoppable. Its practical benefits for alertness and its integral role in social life ultimately overcame all opposition. The distinct sound of coffee being ground with a mortar and pestle, or the rhythmic drip of water through the fine coffee grounds, became the quiet soundtrack to countless awakenings across the Ottoman Empire. Coffee's journey to Europe was equally fascinating and, at times, fraught with intrigue. It was introduced to Venice in the early 17th century by traders with contacts in the Ottoman Empire, initially perceived as an exotic, medicinal curiosity, or even as Satan's bitter invention by some fearful Christians. However, its invigorating properties quickly won over the adventurous. The first European coffee houses began to appear in Venice, then London, Paris, and Vienna. These European coffee houses mirrored their Middle Eastern counterparts in becoming vital centers of intellectual and political ferment. In London, they were dubbed penny universities because for the price of a cup of coffee, one could engage in stimulating conversation and learn from scholars, merchants, and politicians. They facilitated the exchange of ideas, the formation of stock exchanges, and even the plotting of revolutions. The rapid proliferation of coffee houses across Europe fundamentally reshaped social interaction, intellectual discourse, and the very rhythm of urban life, moving it from the taverns drunken stupor to the sober, alert engagement of caffeine. The combined global march of tea and coffee triggered a great beverage shift, a profound reordering of humanity's morning rituals and, indeed, its entire daily schedule. These highly caffeinated drinks began to systematically displace the traditional morning fare of ancient beers, posca, milks, and gentle herbal infusions across vast swaths of the world. The economic implications were colossal and complex. The insatiable demand for coffee and tea fueled the growth of vast, international trade networks, necessitating the establishment of immense plantations in colonial territories across Asia, Africa, and the Americas. This demand, sadly, often led to brutal exploitation and the expansion of the transatlantic slave trade, particularly for coffee and later sugar, which became an increasingly common addition to both tea and coffee. Millions of lives were irrevocably altered, their labor coerced, their mornings, if they had any, filled with the harsh realities of plantation life rather than gentle sips. The social implications were equally transformative. New morning rituals emerged, centered around the steaming cup. New social spaces, the coffee houses and later the elegant tea rooms, became central to urban life, offering environments for everything from quiet contemplation to raucous debate. For the first time, a truly global morning ritual began to take shape, connecting disparate cultures through a shared daily awakening. Perhaps the most profound impact was the caffeine revolution itself. Prior to coffee and tea, the stimulants available to humanity were relatively mild. Alcohol, even in low doses, brought a dulled state of awareness. Cacao, with its theobromine, offered a gentle, sustained lift. But caffeine, particularly from roasted coffee beans, delivered a much more immediate, potent, and focused jolt of alertness. This newfound ability to artificially extend periods of wakefulness and sharpen cognitive function had a monumental impact on productivity, intellectual life, and the very perception of time. Scholars could burn the midnight oil with sustained focus. Merchants could calculate with greater precision. Politicians could debate for longer hours. The very concept of an efficient day, stripped of the sleepy lulls of ancient mornings, began to emerge. The sensory experience of this shift was equally powerful. The intense bitter aroma of roasted coffee, or the complex, earthy fragrance of brewing tea, became the unmistakable sense of a world awakening to a new, more dynamic pace. The subtle gurgle of the percolator, the gentle hiss of the kettle, the soft clinking of cups, these were the new sounds of dawn, replacing the rustic clatter of ancient brewing. While coffee and tea ascended to global dominance, other notable morning beverages continued to thrive regionally or transformed their consumption. Indigenous chocolate, originally a bitter ceremonial drink, journeyed to Europe and was gradually transformed into a sweetened, comforting beverage, often consumed for breakfast by the wealthy. Yerba mate maintained its deep cultural significance in parts of South America, and various pre-colonial African indigenous stimulant drinks continued to be consumed locally. Even today, in many parts of the world, basic water and milk, especially fermented varieties, remain foundational morning sips, particularly in rural areas less influenced by global trends. This reminds us that while global shifts occurred, the local tapestry of human experience always retains its unique threads. This colossal shift in morning rituals, driven by the global circulation of coffee and tea, fundamentally reshaped daily life across continents. It was a testament to the immense power of botany, trade, and human desire for improved well-being and productivity. From the quiet dawn of humanity's relationship with water to the complex, globalized morning routines of the modern era, the journey of our first sip has been a continuous testament to human ingenuity and adaptation. It has transformed sleepy awakenings into moments of sharp alertness, local customs into global phenomena, and simple plants into the engines of empires and intellectual revolutions. The legacy of these pre-coffee mornings is etched not just in forgotten recipes, but in the very rhythm of our waking lives, a quiet hum that underlies every synchronized moment of our interconnected world, a gentle reminder that even the most mundane of daily habits carries a history of profound significance. The final sip of history echoes in our modern morning as the aromatic steam from 1,000 different vessels once rose into the ancient dawn. From the humble earthenware pot holding bitter herbal infusions to the frothing clay cup of sacred cacao, we have journeyed through the quiet, often overlooked history of humanity's morning beverages. We began our odyssey in a world where the first sip of the day was often just water, a precious, life-sustaining liquid whose purity was a constant gamble. We witnessed the accidental genius of fermentation, transforming common grains into nourishing, mildly intoxicating, and crucially, safer liquid sustenance, like the thick beers that powered the ancient Egyptians and Mesopotamians from sunrise to sunset. We observed the pragmatic Romans, diluting their wines into refreshing posca for legions and laborers alike, a testament to efficiency and endurance. And we then traced the remarkable ascent of tea and coffee from their localized origins. Tea in the mist-laden mountains of China, coffee in the highlands of Ethiopia, to their triumphant, transformative, and often tumultuous global dominance. This seemingly mundane history, this journey through the evolution of what we simply drink each morning, reveals a narrative far richer and more profound than one might initially imagine. It is a story woven with threads of survival, ingenious resourcefulness, cultural adaptation, and the relentless, almost unconscious, human pursuit of comfort, clarity, and subtle stimulation. Every sip, whether of ancient beer or modern coffee, holds within it echoes of millennia of human endeavor, problem-solving, and ritual. The history of morning beverages is, in essence, a history of human civilization itself, a quiet mirror reflecting our triumphs over disease, our advancements in agriculture, our intricate trade networks, and the subtle shifts in our social structures, and daily rhythms at the transition from the slow, deliberate preparation of ancient brews, the careful grinding of cacao, the prolonged boiling of herbal decoctions, the rhythmic whisking of powdered tea, to the rapid convenience of modern coffee machines and tea bags reflects not just technological progress, but a fundamental acceleration of human life itself. For countless generations, the morning beverage was an unhurried ritual, demanding presence and patience. It was a time to connect with the raw ingredients, with the elements of fire and water, and perhaps, with a deeper internal rhythm before the day's demands fully descended. This unhurried start to the day cultivated a different kind of awareness, a more grounded connection to the physical world and the immediate moment. Today, the world awakens to the potent jolt of caffeine, a global phenomenon that has fundamentally reshaped our concept of productivity and time. The invigorating aroma of coffee, a scent that would have been utterly alien to the vast majority of human history, now signals the start of the working day for billions. Tea, in its myriad forms, offers a gentler but equally potent awakening, its global reach undeniable. These beverages, once exotic novelties, have become indispensable commodities, driving vast economies, connecting distant lands through intricate supply chains, and in some historical instances, even fueling empires and conflicts. The boring details of cultivation, processing, and trade, when examined closely, reveal staggering scales of human labor, ingenuity, and unfortunately, exploitation. Yet, even in our hyper-caffeinated, fast-paced world, the ancient echoes persist. We still seek comfort in a warm cup as dawn breaks. We still crave that subtle shift from sleep to alertness. And for many, the act of preparing that first drink remains a small, personal ritual, a moment of quiet contemplation before the day's demands fully envelop us. Whether it's the automated gurgle of a coffee machine, the gentle whistle of a kettle for tea, or the mindful pour-over of a connoisseur, the underlying human need for that first, satisfying sip endures, connecting us across the vast expanse of time to those who came before. So, as you drift into a peaceful slumber, perhaps you can carry with you a renewed appreciation for the liquid quietude that once defined the world's mornings. From the primordial purity of water to the nourishing embrace of ancient beer, the refreshing tang of posca, the sacred froth of cacao, and the comforting steam of herbal infusions, each morning drink tells a silent story of survival, innovation, and humanity's enduring quest to define and enhance the precious moments of waking. The history of what flowed into ancient cups is not just a tale of beverages. It is a profound reflection on the subtle, yet powerful, ways that daily habits have shaped civilizations, one quiet, conscious sip at a time. May your dreams be as rich and calming as the deepest historical brew.